Prime Minister, it's a year, I think, since you were last at the Liaison Committee, and in that year you triggered the election last March. You triggered Article 50 last March. When you triggered the Article 50 last March, did you plan to hold a general election, or call a general election a month later?
Yeah. As I made clear at the time that I called the general election, having seen some of the response to the issues around Brexit, I felt it was appropriate to call that general election.
But at the point of the Article 50 being called, the end of March, were you planning to hold a general election at that point, knowing you had 2 years to go before the United Kingdom would leave the European Union and had a lot of work to do in those 2 years?
Yes, of course there was a lot of work to do in those 2 years.
Did you plan to hold the election?
And when I did call the general election, I was aware of the fact that we had work to do in relation to the Brexit negotiations. And as you know, because I've said it, I made the final decision on the general election at a time, it was over that Easter time, just before we came back into Parliament.
Having triggered Article 50, having called the election, did you then imagine you'd go back 6 months later and beg the European Union for 2 more years in the Florence speech?
I haven't begged the European Union for 2 more years. If you look at what I said in the Lancaster House speech, you will see that we were already talking about the concept of a smooth and orderly process of withdrawing from the European Union. That is what the implementation period is about. This is not 2 more years to negotiate with the European Union. This is about 2 years when practically both businesses and governments will be able to put in place the changes necessary to move from the current relationship to the future partnership that we will have.
But the reality is the 2 years that were triggered in March 2017 was not long enough. And in that period you also held an election, and now you want this 2-year period to go on longer. Was it wise to hold an election in that time when you knew the time would be so short, or did you not realise time would be so short?
No, I'm sorry, because I don't accept the comment you're making about the timing in relation to the implementation period. This is not, we've not suddenly said, because there was a general election this year, we need an extra 2 years on the other end of this negotiation. We've been very clear all along that there would be, in order to have a smooth and orderly Brexit, in order to have that smooth and orderly leaving of the European Union, we would want to ensure that businesses and governments were able to adjust to the future partnership. That is the purpose of the implementation period. That implementation period was always going to be after the point at which we've left the European Union, which, having triggered in March of this year, is going to be the end of March, 29th of March 2019.
I think people will draw their own conclusions. Prime Minister, on trade deals, how many countries will the UK have increased trade barriers with after Brexit?
Well, after Brexit, we will be in a position, we're looking to ensure that we're able not only to have new trade deals with countries around the world, but also there are obviously a number of trade arrangements which are currently held with the European Union, and we'll be looking at our relationship with those countries once we leave the EU and are no longer subject to those arrangements.
We will have increased trade barriers with the EU 27, that's definite.
Sorry, I didn't catch your question.
We will have increased trade barriers and tariffs with the EU 27. We have a further 40 agreements covering another 67 countries. So the UK is heading for a situation, very possibly, where we'll have increased trade barriers with up to 94 countries. How do you feel about that, Prime Minister?
Well, I don't accept the premise of your question, I'm afraid.
So
the premise of your question is based on us not being able, first of all, to negotiate a trade deal with the European Union, and an expectation that there were bound to be increased trade barriers as a result of any negotiations that we have. I don't accept the premise of that. The premise of the question
is based on the reality that you can have zero increase, which would maintain what we have at the moment, or we can go up to as many as 94. My original question in this area was how many countries between 0 and 94 will the UK have increased trade barriers with?
No, and as I have made clear, there will be, when we have left the European Union, we will be looking to have trade deals in place. Obviously, there's a question of what we can do during the implementation period, but we intend to have trade deals in place with countries around the world with which, in some cases, the European Union may not currently have trade deals with those countries. There will be countries where the European Union does have trade deals, and we will be looking at the relationship the United Kingdom will have with those countries post-Brexit as a result of no longer being part of those EU trade deals. And we've already started discussions with a number of those countries as to how we can ensure.
Just as a basic here, Prime Minister, do you accept the premise that it's possible for the UK to have increased trade barriers with up to 94 countries? Do you accept that possibility?
No, what I'm saying is
that what we